G20 presidency. Minister, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Peters. His Excellencies, distinguished ministers, heads of international organizations, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's my honor to welcome you all to this important Compact with Africa side event held on the margins of the first G20 Leaders Summit on the African soil. We gather at a historic moment, one in which Africa's voice, priorities, and aspirations are shaping global economic discussions in an unprecedented and meaningful ways. This year, the Compact with Africa was designated as one of the key priorities of South Africa's G20 presidency. We worked diligently to elevate its profile and promote the initiative in ways not done in recent years. Since its inception in 2017 under the German G20 presidency, the Compact with Africa has evolved into one of the most influential platforms for partnership between African countries, the G20 and the international financial institutions. The initiative was founded on a clear and compelling vision to improve the investment climate in participating African countries, strengthen macroeconomic and financial frameworks, and mobilize private investment to support sustainable and inclusive economic growth. The Compact rests on three core pillars: macroeconomic stability, predictable financing frameworks, and sound business environments. Over the years, Compact countries have advanced ambitious reform agendas to enhance public financial management, modernize revenue systems, deepen financial markets, and create conditions that enable vibrant private sector participation. These reforms have helped attract greater investor interest, stimulated infrastructure development, and strengthened dialogue between African governments and the global partners. The Compact has also expanded in both scope and membership, demonstrating its continued relevance and appeal. This expansion reflects the growing confidence in the Compact's approach, as well as the increasing demand across the continent for structured, reform-oriented partnerships that deliver tangible economic outcomes. We are pleased to have worked closely with Germany this year to bring this Compact with Africa to the forefront of the G20 agenda. With those words, it's now my honor and privilege to invite His Excellency, Deputy President Paul Mashatile, the Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa, to deliver his remarks. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Minister Kodongwana. Let me greet Chancellor Friedrich Merz from Germany, sitting on my right. Let me greet Your Excellency President Lorenzo, President of the Republic of Angola, all excellencies, heads of states and government who are with us here that I may not have seen, I'm sure others are still coming. President of the World Bank, Ajay Banga, distinguished ministers and central bank governors, heads of international organizations, distinguished guests. It is my honor to welcome you to this G20 Compact with Africa event on economic growth and jobs. This event allows us to reflect on the progress that has been achieved through the Compact with Africa and to discuss the promise of its next phase, known as Compact with Africa 2.0. The Compact aims to deepen investments, create jobs and build sustainable prosperity through stronger partnerships with the private sector. Since its establishment during Germany's G20 presidency in 2017, the Compact with Africa has made steady progress. It has supported participating countries in implementing ambitious reforms and mobilizing investments. It has strengthened dialogue between governments, private investors, and international partners. We welcome the increased interest by African countries in joining the initiative. This underscores its relevance and value. This year, we have made revitalizing the Compact with Africa a central priority, with a focus on expanding membership through enhanced visibility within the G20 and across the African continent. Over the course of 2025, and in close collaboration with the German federal government, we convened a series of high-level events to showcase and profile the Compact. This included a ministerial dialogue held on the margins of the G20 finance ministers and the central bank governors in July. This was followed by a ministerial outreach on the margins of the 8th African Union Specialized Committee on Finance in October. The ministerial outreach was an important platform to inform AU member states about the benefits and achievements of the Compact. The last high-level event was convened on the margins of the 2025 annual meetings of the World Bank Group and the International Monetary Fund. Supported by the World Bank, this event marked the official launch of the new multi-donor trust fund designed to support the next phase of reforms and investment within the Compact with Africa framework. We welcome Germany's commitment to provide the initial contribution of 10 million euros towards this new instrument. Today's dialogue reaffirms the importance of strong cooperation between the G20 and Africa, underscoring the vital role of the private sector and driving growth, creating jobs, and promoting shared prosperity. I trust that through this engagement, we will strengthen the Compact as a key channel for partnership, reform support, and increase private sector involvement. We are confident that it will continue to unlock investments and help build resilience, inclusive economies across the continent. In closing, I would like to thank the German federal government for its steadfast leadership of this initiative since its inception. I acknowledge our valued partners, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank Group, the African Development Bank, the African Center for Economic Transformation, and the African Union for their continued support. Lastly, we recognize the Compact countries for their efforts in reforming their economies and ensuring that investment flows in Africa. Let us move forward with renewed partnerships and new investments. Let us work together to secure growth, jobs, and shared prosperity for all Africans. I now invite Chancellor Metz to deliver his remarks. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much, Mr. Vice President, for your kind introduction. I'm really happy to be here and to be here for the first time when the G20 Summit takes place for the first time in Africa. So I'm feeling very much welcomed, and I would like to say that there is no better place than Johannesburg to talk about Africa's economic future. And Mr. Vice President, I know what I'm speaking about because during my education as a lawyer, I spent a couple of months in this beautiful country, and since then I know the huge potential of this beautiful country in the southern part of the African continent. So many thanks for inviting us, many thanks for being together in this group, and it's really my great pleasure to welcome all of you to this side event on the G20 meeting with the Compact with Africa group. Africa is, as I said, a continent of opportunity. Africa is a continent of huge opportunities. Africa is a young, dynamic continent. And Africa is a continent with huge economic potential, therefore. And our partnership can unlock much more of this potential in the future. The G20 Compact with Africa builds exactly these partnerships between G20 members and African countries, between governments and the private sector, and between entrepreneurs and investors. Compact countries are pushing reforms. With support from the World Bank, from you, dear Ajay, and from many partners in the world. They are all creating conditions that attract private investment. This is good for Africa's growth. This is good for the people on the continent, and this is good for global growth. Now we see many success stories in many compact countries already. More investment, more jobs. But our task is, today and from now on, to scale this up. I would call it a new phase, or let's name it Compact 2.0. With Zambia and Angola joining this year, the Compact is now a group of 15. Congratulations, President Lorenzo. Welcome on board of this group. Now, as you know, Germany supports this group. Germany currently supports economic reform projects in compact countries, and we are supporting that with more than 3.2 billion euros. This is a strong lever for new economic opportunities, both for Africa and for my country, for Germany. Today, and this is a great pleasure for me, I can announce a further important step of our engagement. Germany will become a shareholder of the African Trade and Investment Development Insurance through our development bank, which is called KfW, Kreditanstalt für Wiederaufbau. ATIDI is a powerful instrument, as you all know. It boosts trade. It boosts private investment in Africa. It reduces risks and builds trust for investors and for new investors. Our German equity investment in ATIDI will amount to more than 37 million euros now. This will have a big impact. We will be able to mobilize an additional at least 400, potentially 430 million euros or 500 million US dollars in trade and investment. We will see even stronger trading links between Germany and African countries, more investment by German companies on the continent, more value creation in Africa. Our cooperation, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, is here to stay. We are and we will remain partners for a better future on this continent, in my country, and together. Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here and part of the group.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, for those insightful remarks. Having heard from the two co-chairs of the Compact, South Africa and Germany, it is now my great pleasure to invite His Excellency, Mr. João Lourenço, President of the Republic of Angola, the current chair of the African Union, and a newly admitted Compact with Africa member, to share his reflections on Africa's perspectives and opportunities. And it is indeed an honor to welcome the Republic of Angola as the 15th member of the Compact with Africa. Your Excellency, President Lourenço, the floor is yours.
Muito obrigado. Excelência, Sr. Vice-Presidente da República da África do Sul, em representação do Presidente Cyril Ramaphosa, Sua Excelência Friedrich Merz, Chanceler da República Federal da Alemanha e co-presidente do Grupo Consultivo Africano sobre o Compacto with África, Excelências, chefes de Estado e de Governo dos países do Compacto with África, minhas senhoras, meus senhores, Excelências.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of South Africa, representing President Cyril Ramaphosa, President of South Africa, His Excellency Friedrich Merz, Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany, and co-chair of the African Consultative Group on Compact with Africa, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government of Compact African Country, ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies.
Gostaria de começar por felicitar a África do Sul e a Alemanha por organizarem este importante evento paralelo em colaboração com a União Africana sobre o Pacto com a África.
I would like to start by congratulating South Africa and Germany for organizing this important side event in collaboration with the African Union on the Compact with Africa.
Gostaria também de felicitar mais uma vez a África do Sul por ter acolhido com sucesso o G20 em África e por ter feito do Pacto do G20 com a África uma das prioridades da sua presidência do G20.
I would also like once again to extend my congratulations to South Africa for the successful hosting of the G20 in Africa and for making the G20 Compact with Africa one of the priorities for its G20 presidency.
A União Africana congratula-se por constatar que o objetivo de aumentar o número de países signatários do Pacto com a África durante a presidência sul-africana do G20 foi alcançado com a adesão de mais 2 países, nomeadamente a Zâmbia e Angola.
The African Union is pleased to note that the objective of increasing the number of signatory countries to the Compact with Africa during the South Africa's G20 presidency was achieved with the accession of 2 more countries, namely Zambia and Angola.
Gostaria, portanto, de aproveitar esta oportunidade para felicitar a Zâmbia e agradecer, em nome da Angola, por esta importante conquista.
I would therefore like to take this opportunity to congratulate Zambia and thank you on behalf of Angola on this significant achievement.
Com esse passo, o número de países signatários do Pacto com a África passa a ser de 15.
With this step, the number of signatory countries to the Compact with Africa now stands at 15.
Para aqueles que estão familiarizados com o sistema jurídico da União Africana, 15 é o número mínimo de ratificações necessárias para a entrada em vigor da maioria dos nossos instrumentos jurídicos.
For those acquainted with the legal framework of the African Union, 15 is the minimum number of ratifications required for the entry into force of most of our legal instruments.
Assim, posso inferir que o Pacto com a África se tornou agora uma iniciativa à escala da União Africana, o que é positivo para a integração econômica do continente.
In this regard, I may infer that the Compact with Africa has now become an initiative of the African Union scale, which bodes well with Africa's economic integration.
A União Africana acredita firmemente que, à medida que mais países africanos aderirem ao Pacto com a África, implementarem reformas fundamentais, a África como um todo se posicionará como um continente reformador e aberto aos negócios, tornando os nossos países mais atrativos para os investidores, que são necessários para concretizar o objetivo de uma África próspera, baseado no desenvolvimento inclusivo e sustentável, articulado com a aspiração 1 da Agenda 2063, a África que queremos.
The African Union firmly believes that as more African countries join the Compact with Africa and implement fundamental reforms, Africa as a whole will position itself as a reform-oriented continent, open for business, thereby rendering our countries more attractive to investors who are essential for the realization of a prosperous Africa, one based on inclusive and sustainable development as articulated in Aspiration 1 of the 2063 Agenda, Africa We Want.
Apelo a todos os presentes para que trabalhem em conjunto e com celeridade para tornarmos esta ambição em realidade.
I call upon all those present here to work together and with diligence so that we may transform this ambition into reality.
Nossos povos e o mundo estão com os olhos postos em nós, portanto, não os desiludamos.
Our peoples and the world have their eyes upon us. Let us not disappoint them.
Obrigado pela vossa atenção.
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency, President Lorenzo. I will now invite Mr. Mahmoud Yusuf, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, to take the floor. Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Mr. President, Your Excellency, Mr. Chancellor, Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Governments, ladies and gentlemen. Building on the statement by His Excellency, Mr. João Manuel Gonçalves Rolanço, President of the Republic of Angola and Chair of the African Union, let me highlight three main opportunities for the sake of complementarity between the G20 Compact with Africa and key African Union strategies and programs. The first key element is the African Continental Free Trade Area. The intra-African trade and investment needs to be boosted in order to achieve the objective of an inclusive growth and a sustainable development. Now, the issue is that Africa's trade potential remains largely unrealized, mainly due to the continent's weak productive sector, deficient logistic links, and trade-related infrastructure. In order to address these challenges, Africa needs huge investments, both domestic and foreign, estimated at around $130 billion to $170 billion per year. As highlighted at the third Financing Summit for Africa's infrastructure development in Luanda, Angola last month. In this respect, the Compact with Africa provides an opportunity to implement the reforms to attract the necessary investments needed to harness the full potential of AFCFTA. More specifically, reforms under the Compact with Africa will help achieve the objectives of the protocol of the Continental Free Trade Area Agreement on investment. Second, there's an opportunity for complementarity between the Compact with Africa and the African Virtual Investment Platform, which was launched in February 2025. This digital tool aims to gather quality and timely information on public and private, foreign and domestic investment and related policies and reforms across all African countries and sectors. Third and last area is the sector of industrialization through manufacturing and value chains development, underpinned by the Accelerated Industrial Development for Africa Action Plan. In effect, by promoting targeted and integrated economic policy reforms, Compact Africa can help unlock investments needed to accelerate regional and continental value chains development. The focus should be on priority sectors such as mineral resources in order to create decent jobs and generate incomes for millions of Africans. Your Excellencies, as I conclude, let me reaffirm the African Union's commitment to work with the co-chairs and the G20 Africa Advisory Group in advancing the Compact with Africa during the next cycle of G20 presidencies, facilitating experience, sharing, and dissemination of best practices between Compact with African countries and other AU member states are indeed of paramount importance. I thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson Yusuf. We will now hear from a compact country, Ethiopia, on how the initiative is being implemented at the country level and the benefits and successes that are already emerging. It is my pleasure to invite His Excellency Dr. Abiy Ahmed Ali, Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, to share Ethiopia's experience, including successes and lessons learned under the Compact. Your Excellency, Prime Minister Abiy, the floor is yours.
Your Excellency, Chancellor Frederick, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, dear friends, the Compact with Africa was built on a simple yet transformative idea. When African nations commit to reform, and the G20, along with other international partners, commit to support those efforts with capital, technology, and expertise, a new development pathway becomes possible. 8 years after the Compact launch, the results speak for themselves. Across Compact countries, a wave of deep, difficult, and decisive reforms have taken root. Reforms that strengthen macroeconomic stability, open economies to investment, and restore confidence. In Ethiopia, we have undertaken historic change, modernizing our macroeconomic framework, reforming our monetary and financial systems, opening up our financial sector, expanding financial inclusion, and in one of our most consequential reforms, liberalizing our foreign exchange regime. This reform takes place in Ethiopia after 5 decades. These are not abstract achievements. They are the foundations of a modern, resilient economy capable of attracting long-term private capital. We have tackled long-standing barriers to enterprise and job creation by opening telecom markets, reforming state-owned enterprises, improving trade facilitation, advancing renewable energy investment, and strengthening regulatory frameworks for long-term finance and capital market. Though demanding political courage, these reforms have made our economies more competitive. Africa's economic rise is underway, taking shape in our cities, farmers, factories, and digital ecosystems. To unlock its full potential, reform must drive investment, and investment must drive shared growth. The world today is far more complex than when the Compact began. It must now focus on accelerating transformation at scale. The G20 must match ambition with action through genuine partnership grounded in investment, innovation, and shared prosperity. It must strengthen the Compact with Africa 2.0 Trust Fund, expand guarantees, and blend finance to unlock private capital, advance timely and predictable debt relief under the common framework, support deeper capital markets, and improved credit ratings, and also champion African integration from African Continental Free Trade Area, corridors to cross-border infrastructure and digital connectivity. The next decade must be even more ambitious. Let Compact with Africa 2.0 be a platform for Africa and global prosperity. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency Prime Minister Abiy, for those valuable insights into Ethiopia's reform efforts, as well as highlighting the concrete benefits of the compact. I now invite His Excellency Mr. Jonas Gahr Støre, Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Norway, to take the floor. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Norway is as far away as you can come from the African continent. It's a long travel. But I'm happy that we have been part of the compact since 2017. I'd like to salute South Africa and Germany for launching it and for expanding on it. And I hear from my colleague from Ethiopia that it is gaining also relevance in one of the most thriving economies. Yesterday, I visited a 100 megawatt solar power plant in the Free State, 1 hour outside Johannesburg. It is a company called Mainstream with a major Norwegian share. So I've seen a Norwegian company investing in this, and it will provide electricity to thousands of households around Johannesburg. And when you drive there, you see that there is a lot of housing which is fine. And there's also housing without electricity and with severe deficit on grids. So all of this comes together to say that the compact is important. It is of relevance also for my country. Every year we host the Nordic African Business Summit in Oslo, which has grown to become the biggest event in the Nordic countries to promote investment and business with the continent. So I think this fits well with the compact. The key words here: true partnerships, meaningful dialogue, collaboration on reform, sharing experiences, and also the role of the multilateral development banks. And I also like to salute my friend, President of the World Bank, how the World Bank and the development banks now take, I think, a role in innovating their mechanisms. And let me say, just coming from Norway, that development aid is not going to make the big difference here. It is, ODA is at best declining, at worst declining rapidly. But we are also innovating, doing new things, which is more in line of the investment. And Africa is really offering so tremendous opportunities in that direction. We had a successful Business 20 meeting here in Johannesburg recently. And I heard from my business that they came back with new ideas, new contacts, and new inspiration to move forward. So I see this as an opportunity also to have springboard for our industries and our investments in Africa. And I hope that Germany and South Africa will continue to call these side events, because I think they are good stock takings also for a country like mine. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency Prime Minister Støre, for expressing your support to the compact. We will now invite another central partner in advancing the work of the compact, the World Bank Group, to share with us their role in supporting jobs and growth in Africa and advancing South Africa's G20 presidency's legacy in this regard. Mr. Ajay Banga, the President of the World Bank Group, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. You know, by 2050, 85% of the world's population will be in what we call today developing countries. 1 in 4 actually will be African. Africa will have the largest workforce in the world and the youngest. Its cities will be among the fastest growing. But population is just one part of that story. Many of these countries hold the very resources, as the German Chancellor and the Norwegian Prime Minister just said. They hold the very resources that will shape the world's future. Over 60% of the world's uncultivated arable land, enough to help feed a growing planet, is in Africa. Minerals critical for energy and digital transitions are in Africa. An abundant sun, wind and water, enough to meet their own needs, but potentially to export clean energy to others. This is Africa's gift. They will help define the century. With the right approach, if we focus on opportunity, not on need, we can unlock a tremendous engine of global growth and job creation. And that is why we are focused on private sector jobs, which account for 90% of unemployment, and on building the conditions that allow entrepreneurs and businesses to thrive. So we think it takes three things. The first is critical infrastructure, both physical and human: roads, ports, power, health, skills. That is why we are working on M300 with the African Development Bank to connect people to electricity in Africa. It is why we are doing work on healthcare. It is why we are doing work on small farmers and agribusiness. Second, a better business environment. The point that the Prime Minister of Ethiopia was making: clear, predictable rules and modern institutions. And third, a thriving private sector supported by access to de-risking tools, like in fact the Chancellor talked about ATIDI. ATIDI, which KfW has just invested in, is a partner of MEGA. And so I'm really glad to see this, because I think KfW bringing their capital to the table is a sign of great belief in ATIDI. Now the thing is, this is not about shifting jobs across borders. I'm convinced this is about creating opportunity where people live by building a middle class that drives demand, including for goods and services from developed economies. Because development is not a zero-sum game, it's an investment in our shared future, as you can see both the European leaders saying with great clarity. Germany understands that, Norway understands that. They are playing a catalytic role through the Compact with Africa. The first phase was focused on business environment, 13 countries. We worked with them to modernize customs, tax systems, and reform commercial laws. That's how the foundation for investment happened in Ethiopia, in Tunisia, in Morocco. Momentum is building, and thanks to the President of Angola, Angola and Zambia have also joined this year. We're now into the second phase, one that it's all about scale, as the Chancellor said. We will have a new trust fund that is benefiting from Germany's generosity. For the first time, all parts of the institution are operating through a single platform, which to me is a tangible milestone of the very reform agenda that I was elected and the G20 asked me to lead on. This next phase will focus on countries advancing reform and private sector opportunity by three things: invest in critical infrastructure, invest in skills. Second, support continued reforms to strengthen institutions, and most importantly, transparency. And third, mobilize private capital to deliver jobs at scale. So the idea here is we're going to help businesses, large and small, to start, to grow, to thrive. But I think that reform ambition has to be led by the African governments themselves. We can help. The World Bank can help. The IMF can help. The African Development Bank can help. Other partners, but by help. But eventually, it is for African countries and leaders to seize the moment. Thank you to Germany, thank you to South Africa for your continued leadership, and thanks to all of you for your generosity in having us as a part of this group. I really appreciate that.
Thank you very much, President Banga. To formally convey our appreciation and bring the side event to a close, I now have the honor of inviting Mr. Ronald Lamola, Minister of International Relations and Cooperation of the Republic of South Africa, to deliver a word of thanks on behalf of the South African G20 presidency. Minister Lamola, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. In the interest of time, I will stand on existing protocols. It was a distinguished honor to have you all here with us today as we conclude this high-level side event on the G20 Compact with Africa. Allow me to extend our deepest gratitude on behalf of South Africa's G20 presidency to all who contributed to make this important event a success. As was eloquently articulated by the speakers, the Compact with Africa 2.0 aimed to deepen investment, create jobs, build sustainable prosperity through stronger partnerships with the private sector. We hope that this event further highlighted the importance of the Compact in further unlocking the economic potential of the continent. I would like to thank all speakers for conveying one overarching message of the important and key role players in the partnerships. Cooperation and private sector play in enhancing economic growth, decent jobs, prosperity in Africa and beyond. We further note with satisfaction that G20 Leaders Summit recognized the importance of the G20 Compact with Africa and commended South Africa's G20 presidency for strengthening the compact further, including through launch of the second phase 2025 to 2033, supported by the establishment of the World Bank Group Multi-Donor Fund. I would like to convey a special thanks to Your Excellencies President Ramaphosa, here today represented by the Deputy President Paul Mashatile, and the Federal Chancellor of Merz, of Germany, Chancellor Merz, for hosting this event and highlighting how cooperation between G20 economies and African economies is vital in boosting private investment in Africa. We will be following through the conclusion of this side event, issue a joint communique outlining the spirit of our discussion and commitments and strengthen the G20 Compact with Africa as the key platform for dialogue and engagement between the G20 and Africa, and emphasizing the key role the private sector has to play in enhancing economic growth, decent jobs, prosperity in Africa within the G20. Thank you very much, Duncan. I hope you will then announce the processes of the family photo. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Lamola. That brings the event to a close, and I believe it will be followed by a photo. Thank you.
Protocol will guide us outside.
And the name is Al-Nani Al-Aziz.
Mr. President, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to be with you today, only days after my appointment, and to bring UNESCO's voice to this vital forum held for the first time on my African continent. My warmest thanks go to the South African Presidency for uniting us around a shared ambition, inclusive and sustainable economic growth, a theme fully aligned with UNESCO's 4 strategic objectives: investing in education to transform lives, reconciling humanity with nature, building just, inclusive, and peaceful societies, and fostering innovation and technology. Allow me to briefly highlight 3 areas of close collaboration between UNESCO and the G20 to advance this vision in Africa, one of our 2 global priorities alongside gender equality. First, on artificial intelligence, UNESCO had led the working group established by President Ramaphosa, guided by our 2021 recommendation on ethics of AI. Together with the African Union and the South African G20 presidency, we have launched the AI in Africa initiative, aligned with the African Union's 2024 AI strategy. We'll train around 20,000 civil servants and judicial professionals and 2,000 teachers and students, and support 25 additional African countries integrating AI into national policies. Second, in education, we are championing innovative financing to ensure debt does not hinder learning. In 2023, for instance, we facilitated the agreement between Côte d'Ivoire and France to convert debt into investment in education. Third, in culture, from combating illicit trafficking to supporting culture and the creative industries and safeguarding heritage and traditional knowledge, UNESCO continues to affirm that no sustainable development is possible without culture, as reaffirmed in the Pact for the Future. Excellencies, UNESCO stands ready to deepen its role as an active member of the multilateral system and as a committed partner of the G20. Your priorities resonate with every dimension of our mandate and expertise. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much indeed. I now call upon Her Excellency, Ms. Rebecca Grace-Span. May you.
President Ramaphosa, Excellencies, being here, one cannot help but reflect on this country's trajectory. South Africa has much to teach to the world. You have used this G20 presidency to share your hard-won wisdom, that moving together is not inevitable. It is chosen, daily, deliberately. This year, you have championed the debt challenge echoed by so many economies and countries here today. You have championed fighting commodity dependence, pushing for productive diversification and value added. And you have championed the need for the Global South to have a voice, not just a presence. Thank you for your courage and conviction, Mr. President. Excellencies, since COVID, the global economy has grown by more than $30 trillion, equivalent to the entire world GDP in the year 2000. Trade will grow 4% this year, despite all tensions, with South-South trade growing twice as much. AI is reshaping entire sectors and driving investment. Clean energy is advancing faster than even optimists predicted. The motion is undeniable. But trillions in aggregate growth mean little when tariffs close markets you were starting to reach, when borrowing costs are 3 times that others pay, when debt service absorbs budgets meant for development. Yes, the world economy this year showed resilience that deserves celebration. But resilience, I insist, is not necessarily stability, nor prosperity. And the forces driving today's resilience aren't always the same that will sustain tomorrow's development. When some advance as others fall back, we do not move together. We break apart. Excellencies, we stand at a moment of extraordinary promise. Developing countries want a fair share of that promise. They don't want support, they want a level playing field. The G20 is uniquely placed to strengthen the trade system and build the financial, global, and regional architecture that can give us just that. This is how resilience becomes stability, how motion becomes progress, how we ensure no one gets left behind. I thank you.
Thank you indeed. I now would like to call His Excellency Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, the Director General of the World Health Organization, to take the floor.
President Ramaphosa, Excellencies, first, congratulations to President Ramaphosa and South Africa on hosting the first G20 Summit in Africa. Thanks to investments in health over the past 20 years, global life expectancy has increased by more than 6 years, under 5 mortality has dropped by more than 50%, and maternal mortality has dropped by more than 40%. In the same time frame, at least 25 countries have moved from low income to lower middle income, lower or upper middle income countries. That's no coincidence. Investments in health are investments in human capital, productivity, and economic growth. Conversely, COVID-19 showed that when health is at risk, everything is at risk. The pandemic killed an estimated 20 million people and wiped around $10 trillion from global GDP. WHO thanks the G20 for its leadership on strengthening health security, but more needs to be done. And pandemics are not the only threat to the health of people and economies. So are non-communicable diseases such as heart disease, cancer, and communicable diseases such as HIV, TB, malaria, and diabetes and vaccine-preventable diseases. Health is not simply an outcome of development. It is the means. That means the global crisis in health financing is also a crisis for development and economic growth. But in this crisis lies an opportunity for countries to transition away from aid dependency towards a new era of sovereignty and self-reliance. WHO is supporting countries to make that transition, and we urge the G20 to provide the support to provide countries based on their needs, in line with the Lusaka agenda, because solidarity is our immunity. I thank you, and back to you, President.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ghebreyesus. I now want to call Her Excellency Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, the Director General of the World Trade Organization.
Thank you, Your Excellency President Ramaphosa, and thank you, colleagues, leaders, excellencies. I'm really heartened by the way that, well, I'm heartened that we're still in here with the thunder. I'm heartened by the way that trade has been at the center of most of the discussion today, and the strong support for the reform of the multilateral trading system and the WTO. I want to commend and thank the South African presidency for putting the focus squarely on economic growth, which also means, in a way, putting the focus on trade. Economic growth is the precondition for progress on all the key challenges confronting us, from climate to inequality to geopolitical tensions. My message today is really simple. We cannot achieve sustained inclusive global growth without sustained inclusive global trade. We cannot support more inclusive growth for Africa if we don't support a free, fair, and inclusive global trading system. Put another way, if trade uncertainty, fragmentation, and protectionism continue to rise, we can only expect sluggish growth or worse.
3 pages of the Declaration of the Leaders talks about energy and renewable energy and the just acquisition of energy, talking about 600 million Africans, about half of the continent, that do not have access to electricity. And so yesterday we saw the European Union President Ursula von der Leyen.
But since 2010, trade growth has fallen to 1/3 of its previous pace. Foreign direct investment has been flat, and GDP growth has trended around 2.8%, not 3.5%. If global growth had continued at its previous pace, the world economy would be almost 1/10 larger in size in real terms today. A major reason is clear. Trade opening has slowed, integration has plateaued, and protectionism has increased. The WTO's latest G20 monitoring report shows new tariffs affecting 4 times more trade, about $2.6 trillion, between October of last year and October of this year than in the previous reporting period, the sharpest increase since WTO monitoring began. The global trading system has shown resilience. You've all heard me repeat, and I will not stop doing it, that almost 3/4 of world trade, 72%, is still on WTO terms. So the system is showing unprecedented resilience, despite the disruptions and undermining that has occurred. But its expansion has slowed. A static trading system not only means less competition, less innovation, and weaker growth, but also rising geopolitical tensions. Strong growth fosters a positive sum mindset. the belief that prosperity can be shared. Stagnant growth fuels zero-sum thinking, the belief that one can only advance at another's expense. That is why we need pro-growth WTO reform, reform that opens markets, reduces distortions, improves transparency, provides workable dispute settlement, supports the development of poorer countries, and repositions the system to harness the 21st century economy's huge and exciting potential in green, services-led, and digitally delivered trade. If every member is not ready to move forward, then we need a more flexible WTO, so those members who want to advance can. The WTO's 14th Ministerial Conference in March 2026 provides an opportunity to lay out a clear roadmap. I want to thank the leaders today for the message that I clearly heard, that I hope will go to trade ministers and to WTO ambassadors to define that roadmap for reform at the conference. We are working on it now, and I hope it will be ready. Your support here is invaluable. Excellencies, let me conclude by saying, if the G20 wants to drive more inclusive and sustainable growth, then support for WTO reform is essential, as you've all stated, not for the WTO's sake, but for the sake of global trade, global growth and development, and above all, for the well-being of the citizens of its members. Thank you.
Thank you, my sister. I now want to call His Excellency Mr. Ajay Banga, the President of the World Bank Group.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for the arrangements, including the thunderclap just when Ngozi began to speak, considering our focus on the WTO. In the next 10 to 15 years, 1.2 billion young people, largely from Africa, by the way, will enter the workforce in the developing economies. They will be competing for about 400 million jobs. That is a large gap. With jobs, this generation will power the economy. Without jobs, this will be a very serious challenge. Therefore, jobs have to be at the center of any development, economic, or security strategy. And for us in the bank, it is at the core of our work going forward. Our three-pillar strategy on jobs focuses on private sector job creation, because that is where 90% of jobs are created, and on fostering entrepreneurship for the young. The first pillar is that our public sector arms help governments to develop essential infrastructure. Physical, roads, ports, power, our M300 effort with the African Development Bank is in that category. And then human, healthcare and skilling. Our work on healthcare with Tedros and the government of Japan is in that category. Our knowledge bank helps to build businesses. That's the second pillar. Friendly environments with clear and fair rules and sound economic management. And the third pillar is our private sector arms. Through equity, through capital, through guarantees, we help to reduce risk, allow investors to see a path for return. The thing is that capital alone cannot address the challenge, because the challenge here is also the debt issue that some of you have raised. How are we trying to help? We've helped 14 countries raise more and spend better via public finance reviews. We have got 22 more in the pipeline to be done in the next 6 months. We're deploying debt for development tools. I heard that topic come up a couple of times. To unlock resources, we started with Côte d'Ivoire. 9 more of these are in the pipeline, and we have the appetite to do more. Last year, IDA net flows hit $21 billion, overwhelming majority to Africa. I want to contradict the statement from Russia about the amount of money we put into Africa. The World Bank last year put $40 billion of our own balance sheet into Africa. That is the single largest amount ever in our history and the largest amount of any multilateral bank in Africa. This is up from, by the way, the IDA net flows are up from 12 billion just 3 years ago. A lifeline for countries that are facing liquidity challenges. And then we're working with my friend in the IMF to support countries facing liquidity pressures through domestic revenue reform, increased financing, and like I said, debt for development swaps. But I've said this a few times now, more is needed. The common framework can advance debt restructuring faster through the Global Sovereign Debt Roundtable. We are supporting a maximum 12-month goal for a country to come into the pipe and be ready at the other end. And then there is the opportunity that Japan mentioned to strengthen debt transparency if all G20 countries participate in the World Bank's debt data reconciliation exercises. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, my brother AJ Banga. I now call upon Fanfen Ruanyindo Kayaringwa, Assistant Director General of the International Labour Organization.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, President of South Africa, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, the ILO commends G20 leaders for recognizing the significant threats that inequality, unemployment, underemployment, and informal employment pose to economic growth, development, and economic and social stability. Employment must be placed at the center of economic policies if these are to forge inclusive economic growth that leaves no one behind. We need to ensure that all can equally access to ladders of opportunity, delivering them out of working poverty and into decent work. Yet the reality today is that ILO estimates that 3.8 billion people don't have any form of social protection. In the face of multiple transformations underway, too many remain insecure and vulnerable, lacking sustainable pathways out of working poverty and into formal employment. The creation of productive opportunity for decent work and implementation of universal and adaptive social protection system, including floors, can serve as engines of inclusive growth, ensuring economic policies drive productivity and deliver a future with social justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Last but one speaker is Her Excellency Ms. Ahuna Eziakonyo, Acting Administrator, UNDP.
Your Excellency, in the interest of time, UNDP would like to align with the statement of our UN Secretary General. Thank you very much.
Thank you. His Excellency Maximo Dorino Cullen, Food and Agricultural Organization.
Thank you, President Cyril Ramaphosa and South Africa for your leadership and successful presidency. Excellencies, the spirit of Ubuntu, I am because we are, captures the mindset we need to end hunger and poverty. An urgency is essential. In 2024, 673 million people were chronically undernourished and 839 million lived in extreme poverty. These numbers demand a collective action at scale. FAO welcomes South Africa G20 presidency for building on Brazil's leadership through the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty, and for placing inequality at the center of its food security agenda, and for underscoring the need for adequate and predictable financing. Without real action on inequality and financing, progress will remain fragile. The Extraordinary Committee of Independent Experts shows that inequality is structural and persistent. The rural-urban divide is decisive. The world's extreme poor live in rural areas, most dependent on agriculture. Climate variability threatens to widen this divide and could push up 132 million more people into extreme poverty in 2030. By 2030, the world will have 1.2 billion youth, with 500 million already working in the agri-food systems, often in vulnerable, low-productivity jobs. Rural youth unemployment is nearly double urban levels. Transforming the agri-food system is essential to create a decent work for young people and achieve SDGs 1 and 2. We welcome the G20 principles for inclusive growth and reducing inequality, the inclusion of agri-food systems in Principle 10, and the commitment to universal social protection. Excellencies, the world cannot afford just incremental change. FAO estimates that $1.1 trillion annually is required to transform agri-food systems. And this is achievable through greater efficiency, reduced duplication, and a stronger convergence of MDB support toward best practices and country needs. Through our hand-in-hand initiative, we channel investments where impact is greatest. The Compromiso de Sevilla is an important step towards mobilizing the scale required. Let us act, guided by Ubuntu, to build a more just, resilient, and food secure world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. That concludes the inputs or the interventions in session 1. We did, in terms of our program, include presentations very briefly of the 2 reports that many of you have already referred to, which is the report of the Africa Expert Panel and the report on inequality. We're going to ask the presenters to take no more than just 3 minutes each, just introducing those reports. The reports are quite substantial, and they will be read at leisure by members, states, and members of various organizations. This is just an opportunity for the reports to be formally introduced. I thereafter want to move on to session 2, which member states are now getting ready to make interventions in. Let me then call Mr. Joel Nechitenge to table the report on the Africa Expert Panel, and thereafter get the other report to be tabled.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I was checking, you gave us 3 minutes, and so I'll be very, very brief. Firstly, to indicate that the Africa Expert Panel was set up by the South African presidency in order to make a contribution to the finance stream with specific focus on Africa's conditions and interests. Its organizing framework is that the greatest opportunity for global prosperity in this century lies in African productivity and African progress. And it then argues that Africa is involved in the implementation of a variety of programs which are based on its visions and strategies. Vision 2063, Africa Mining Vision, Vision on Critical Minerals, and so on. So based on those visions and programs, Africa is engaged in its own activities to improve the conditions of life of Africa's people. And so it says to the G20 and to the global community, join Africa and partner it in realizing the objectives that it has set itself. In other words, the purpose of the report is not to ask for aid. It's not to ask for assistance. It's to make the fundamental point that Africa is involved in its own programs to improve the conditions of life of its people, and partnership with Africa will be in the interest of humanity. We say in the conclusion that the G20 nations must act now, not with rhetoric, but with real commitment to investment, reform, and partnership. This is not a call for charity, it is a call for a new global compact that positions Africa as a pillar of a more balanced, prosperous, and resilient international order. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Mr. Joel Nechitenge. That was exactly less than 3 minutes. We'd like to thank you for that. The next report is on inequality, and I'd like to ask Professor Jayati Ghosh and Ms. Winnie Byanyima to present the report. and they also have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, President Ramaphosa, also for the honor of presenting at all to the G20 meeting. We will try and take 4 minutes, if you allow us, 2 for me and 2 for Winnie Byanyima, because we have some important points to make, very, very briefly, if you will forgive us. It is a great honor and privilege. We just want to identify some of the major trends that we found while consulting extensively for this report. And we really would like to emphasize also a proposal that we have, which we believe is ultimately very achievable. First, global inequality remains very high. It did come down slightly since 2000 because of China, but it remains very high, and recent years have seen an increase. But mostly, the problem is the concentration of wealth and income at the top, and the excessive power that that generates to influence regulations, to influence institutions, and to impact on what governments do. We found also that there is a very significant shift in terms of public and private wealth. Private wealth has accelerated dramatically, often because of a transfer of net assets from public to private hands, which in turn has reduced the fiscal space of governments. We found also that contrary to what was a common belief, inequality hampers growth. It actually inhibits better performance, and therefore, G20 leaders from across the political spectrum, if you want to see broad-based progress that benefits citizens, then you must take steps to address inequality. We also found that inequality undermines political stability and democracy, as has already been mentioned, and leads to very adverse social and environmental impacts, particularly through its multidimensional effects. I now pass on to Winnie Byanyima.
Thank you, Jayati. Thank you, Excellency the President. I too thank you for commissioning us and for putting this issue of inequality at the very heart of the international agenda. It's historic. Jayati has set out the drivers of inequality. Our report considers different practical, pragmatic, and very possible ways to respond to these drivers of inequality, much of it based on what governments are doing or have done. Your Excellencies, whether it is about reining in corporate concentration and monopolistic behavior, whether it is about reforming intellectual property regimes while fostering innovation, whether it's about governments providing needed fiscal space for developing countries, all these are achievable through international cooperation. So our report looks at ways to achieve this through national or international means. Our main recommendation, the primary recommendation of this report, is the creation of an international panel on inequality. We find that there is a lot of information out there. Knowledge has been collected, many data sets. However, we find the more we know, the less we know. And the more we know, the more we understand the need to have a platform where there is reliable, comprehensive knowledge for all to use. We envisage a globally balanced international body that would provide a technical service to synthesize and provide authoritative and independent assessments and analysis of inequality. It will be available to everyone, policymakers, private sector, civil society, trade unions, and the media. Our recommendation is inspired by the tremendous work of the IPCC, which has helped governments to address climate change, or also the approach of the new Scientific Panel on Artificial Intelligence. We do not envisage some big global institution, but a lean body bringing together a network of research institutions and individual scholars and experts. It should have authority and carefully guarded independence. Most of the work will largely be done by researchers contributing their time voluntarily. So far, we see that 700 economists and other experts across 70 countries, including Nobel laureates, have asked you, Your Excellencies, to support this initiative and have offered to contribute to its work. Over 30 former presidents and prime ministers have also endorsed the proposal. We're pleased to see governments supporting this new body. We are hopeful that many more governments will support it as a practical way to help your own policymakers to address inequality. It would be a game changer at the crossroads of academia, policy, and practice. Thank you, President Ramaphosa, for entrusting us with this important task. We hope that the distinguished leaders of the G20 sitting here in South Africa, the country that has experienced inequality like no other, will decide to take forward this vital new initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, my two sisters, for presenting this report, and indeed thank you to Mr. Joel Nechidenge. These are the two reports that we spoke about when we started, and we thought that they should be deposited here, much as they have not really been formally discussed during the whole process of the G20. They are deposited here so that we may all internalize them, discuss them. There are reports that can be taken forward in a number of other forums. And we hope that having been introduced here, the G20, we will be able to interface with them in our various other organizations and as governments and organizations and see the best way of taking them forward. I do know, for instance, a suggestion has been made that the African Union, for instance, should take forward these reports, and I'm sure other organizations will do so as well. So thank you very much. These reports are important, and we thank you for presenting them. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I now take you to the second session, A Resilient World, the G20's Contribution, Disaster Risk Reduction, Climate Change, Just Energy Transitions, and Food Systems. I will now allow inputs or interventions, and we had hoped that those who wish to make interventions on this topic should be able to do so, and those who feel that they would like to make interventions in the third session can forego whatever intervention they wish to make. I do have a list. We are working against time because the morning was rather important in terms of having the declaration adopted, but allowing those who were making interventions a little bit more time as they wanted to express themselves. Now we want to limit inputs to strictly the minutes that are set out, 4 minutes each, and thereafter we will go to 3 minutes each for invited countries. I will make my intervention later, and I would now like to ask President Lula da Silva, the President of the Federative Republic of Brazil, to make his intervention in this regard.
Eu quero, mais uma vez, reiterar meus cumprimentos ao presidente Ramaphosa, cumprimentar a presidenta da Namíbia, a senhora Netumbo, e também cumprimentar o Antônio Gutierrez, secretário-geral das Nações Unidas, por meio de quem eu cumprimento todas as entidades internacionais aqui presentes. Esta oportuna sessão ocorre no mesmo tempo em que estamos por 2 palavras para concluirmos as negociações da COP30 no Brasil. No ano em que o planeta ultrapassou pela primeira vez, e talvez de forma permanente, o limite de 1,5 graus acima dos níveis pré-industriais, a comunidade internacional tinha diante de si uma escolha: continuar ou desistir. Optamos pela primeira alternativa. Na COP da verdade, a ciência prevaleceu. O multilateralismo venceu. Reafirmamos nosso compromisso com o Acordo de Paris. Saímos de Belém com um quadro renovado de contribuições nacionalmente determinadas. Mobilizamos a sociedade civil, a academia, o setor privado, os povos indígenas e os movimentos sociais, para fazer da COP30 a COP com a segunda maior participação da história. Entramos agora numa nova etapa que exigirá esforço simultâneo em 2 frentes. Acelerar as ações do enfrentamento da mudança do clima e nos preparar para uma nova realidade climática. O G20 cumpre papel central em ambas. O grupo responde por 77% das emissões globais. É do G20 que um novo modelo de economia deve emergir. O grupo é um ator-chave na elaboração de um mapa do caminho para afastar o mundo dos combustíveis fósseis. A COP30 mostrou que o mundo precisa enfrentar esse debate. A semente dessa proposta foi plantada e irá frutificar mais cedo ou mais tarde. A mudança do clima não é uma simples questão de política ambiental. É, sobretudo, um desafio de planejamento econômico. As prioridades estão invertidas. É inconcebível que não sejamos capazes de mobilizar US$ 1,3 trilhão em financiamento climático, enquanto o dobro desse montante é consumido por despesas militares. Fortalecer a capacidade de prevenção e resposta a desastres é uma questão de vida ou morte. Sistemas de alerta precoce não bastam. O sistema vai colocar às provas nossas pontes, rodovias, edifícios e linha de transmissão. Vai exigir forma mais eficiente de gerir a água, cultivar alimentos e produzir energia. Vai obrigar milhares de pessoas e de negócios a buscarem áreas mais seguras para viver e empreender. Os princípios voluntários para investir em redução de risco e de desastres, aprovados sob a liderança sul-africana do G20, enfatizam a necessidade de financiamento de longo prazo. Construir resiliência não é gasto, é investimento. Para cada dólar investido em adaptação, ganha-se $4 em prejuízos evitados e outros benefícios sociais e econômicos. Mas um mundo resiliente não se faz apenas com infraestrutura. Quando alguém é atingido por um evento extremo, são as políticas públicas do Estado que ajudam a se reerguer. Contudo, cerca da metade da população mundial não conta com proteção social. Quase 700 milhões de pessoas ainda sofrem com a fome. Vai contra nosso sentido mais elementar de justiça permitir que as maiores vítimas da crise climática sejam aquelas que menos contribuíram para causá-la. O Brasil lançou na COP30 a Declaração de Belém sobre fome, pobreza e ação climática, centrada nas pessoas. Nela, reforçamos 3 compromissos: fortalecer a proteção social, apoiar pequenos produtores e garantir alternativas de vida sustentáveis para comunidades que vivem nas florestas. O G20 pode proteger cadeias alimentares por meio de medidas como compras públicas e seguros rurais. Também pode remunerar quem preserva as florestas por meio do Fundo Florestas Tropicais para Sempre, lançado na COP30. Só haverá transição justa se o G20 liderar o caminho. Como nos ensinou Nelson Mandela, tudo parece impossível até que seja feito. A hora de fazer é agora. Muito obrigado.
Thank you, President Lula. I'd now like to ask His Excellency President João Manuel Lorenzo, the President of the Republic of Angola and the Chairperson of the African Union, to take the floor.
Muito obrigado. Sua Excelência Cyril Ramaphosa, Presidente da República da África do Sul e Presidente do G20, Suas Excelências, minhas senhoras, meus senhores, Excelências. A recuperação global após a pandemia da Covid-19 realçou a importância de um mundo resiliente. Contudo, o nosso planeta e as populações continuam a enfrentar efeitos e impactos catastróficos do aquecimento global. As alterações climáticas são uma realidade e têm vindo a afetar gravemente a segurança alimentar, ao perturbarem os sistemas alimentares, para além de gerarem conflitos e provocar deslocações de pessoas, agravando ainda mais a crise humanitária existente. O novo Programa Abrangente de Desenvolvimento Agrícola para a África, a Estratégia de Kampala e o Plano de Ação 2026-2035 focam-se na construção de sistemas agroalimentares resilientes e sustentáveis. O Programa Abrangente de Desenvolvimento Agrícola para a África, em particular com o Grupo de Trabalho do G20 para a Segurança Alimentar, criado pela Presidência Sul-Africana, em conjunto com as organizações internacionais relevantes, como a FAO e o PAM, continuará a apoiar a implementação da Aliança Global contra a Fome e a Pobreza, lançada durante a presidência do G20 do Brasil. Aplaudimos as abordagens inspiradas na filosofia africana sobre segurança alimentar e nutrição. Enaltecemos a liderança da presidência sul-africana no avanço da Agenda Global de Segurança Alimentar e Nutricional através da criação deste grupo de trabalho e propomos a sua continuidade no âmbito do nosso programa. Excelências, as transições para uma energia justa e verde requerem a estabilização sine qua non da situação de paz e segurança, particularmente em África, além do reforço da resiliência e do facto de que a resposta e preparação para desastres naturais deve permanecer no centro das nossas preocupações. Neste sentido, em alinhamento com a estratégia da União Africana sobre as alterações climáticas e desenvolvimento resiliente, saudamos os resultados da COP30, realizada recentemente em Belém do Pará, no Brasil, incluindo respectivos mecanismos de financiamento verde e azul para regiões e países fortemente impactados pelas alterações climáticas. Considero que o G20 deve reafirmar o seu firme compromisso com a Convenção Quadro das Nações Unidas sobre as Alterações Climáticas e o Acordo de Paris, e mobilizar esforços para acelerar a plena implementação de todos os objetivos, metas e mecanismos acordados, especialmente no que respeita ao financiamento climático. Convictos da importância vital de investir nas transições energéticas, na tecnologia e nas infraestruturas, Angola, na qualidade de presidente da União Africana, assumiu a liderança na Congregação dos Parceiros de Desenvolvimento de África para a busca de soluções adequadas para o financiamento das infraestruturas continentais críticas. Agradeço o apoio dos líderes e países do G20, assim como das instituições internacionais que se associaram a nós nesta relevante missão. Excelências, esta cimeira do G20 reveste de um caráter fundamental para a renovação e o reforço dos nossos compromissos coletivos multilaterais em prol do avanço de um desenvolvimento global equitativo. Para este efeito, o continente africano contribuirá de forma ativa por intermédio da Zona de Comércio Livre Continental Africana, um dos maiores mercados econômicos integrados do mundo. Em paralelo e tendo em conta a abundância de recursos naturais críticos e estratégicos de que dispõe, as vastas reservas de biodiversidade e o seu potencial demográfico, a África terá um papel incontornável nos contributos que prestará para impulsionar a transição verde à escala global. Concretizaremos este objetivo com o envolvimento de todos nós. Muito obrigado pela atenção prestada.
Thank you, President Lorenzo. We will start to pick up pace, as I will ask the interventions to stick to the time allocated. I now ask His Excellency, Prime Minister of Australia, Anthony Albanese, to take the floor.
Well, thank you very much, President Ramaphosa. Each and every one of our nations is home to unique natural treasures, and all of our citizens are living with the environmental reality of climate change. Australians have always known drought, floods and bushfires, but they're more intense and they're more frequent. And as we meet here today, there is a cyclone has hit Darwin with devastating impact on that community in Australia's north. The truth is that climate change carries a human toll for communities battling natural disasters and for those who depend upon the land for their livelihood. It has a devastating impact on our economies. So the argument that somehow you can take action on climate change or support economic growth is a false one. We need to deal with the challenge of climate change in order to ensure that our economies can grow. It is critical that we embrace clean energy, and this represents a generational economic opportunity. The G20 enables us to bring global ambition and global cooperation to this task. And the vital message that we must send to the world is that action on climate change is not a matter of asking any nation to forego the jobs, prosperity or security that its people deserve. It's about working with every nation to power the next generation of economic growth while protecting the environment for generations to come. Next year, we will assist Turkey in hosting the COP meeting in Antalya. And we will work constructively to ensure that there are positive outcomes. South Africa's prioritisation of disaster resilience during your G20 presidency reflects the pressing need for collective action. And Australia is proud to be matching our words with actions. At the UN in September, I announced our new 2035 emissions reduction target of 62 to 70% by then. Our target is ambitious, but importantly, it is achievable. It provides the certainty for new national and global investment in jobs and industries of clean energy. At home, Australia is investing in our Disaster Ready Fund to support communities devastated by these natural disasters. In our region, we're supporting the Pacific family to respond to natural disasters and prepare for them with our Australian Humanitarian Partnerships $100 million Disaster Ready program. And we've put in an additional $100 million into the Pacific Resilience Facility that will be so important going forward. We're also investing in climate-smart agricultural practices. And here On the African continent, the Africa-Australia Partnership for Climate Responsive Agriculture aims to guard against food shortages. Colleagues, none of our nations are immune from the environmental challenges of climate change. All of our citizens can benefit from the opportunities of clean energy. As a forum and as leaders, we have a responsibility to our children and grandchildren and the generations to come to make sure that we choose to do the right thing, not choose between protecting our environment or securing our prosperity. We can do both, and indeed we must do both, because each depends on the other.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for sticking to your time. I now want to ask His Excellency, Prime Minister of Canada, Dr. Mark Joseph Carney, to take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I will try to follow the Australian example. Let me start. This session is on resilience, and I want to join others who pointed out in the first session the fragility of armed conflict, condemning Russia's illegal, unjustified, and barbaric invasion of Ukraine, the appalling conflict in Sudan, and our support for all efforts that can lead to just and lasting peace. Now let me speak to climate change. It's been over a decade that we've realized that past is not prologue with respect to climate change. In other words, the tail risks of yesterday become the central scenarios of today. Tipping points are now being realized. And I want to give an example. 2 years ago, the forest fires in Canada alone made Canada the 4th largest emitter of carbon in the world. We have the example of the Darwin cyclone. This year, forest fire damage forests bigger than Sierra Leone, to give orders of magnitude. So we need action on all levels: mitigation, adaptation, and resilience. International collaboration is crucial. I want to thank our hosts, South Africa, Mexico, and others who sent firefighters to Canada to help fight the fires. Coordination through early warning systems. The wildfire satellite system that we're putting in place as part of the G7 global public good, the work of the G20 in disaster risk reduction. Nature-based solutions. We're working towards our 30-30 commitment under the Montreal Kunming Protocol. I want to support the tropical forest financing facility of Brazil's COP, as well as the broader effort, and congratulate them on that. In terms of our own mitigation, I'll just frame it as follows. We view addressing climate change as a moral duty, but also a commercial imperative, as Prime Minister Albanese just intimated. So our strategy on reducing emissions is a climate competitiveness strategy because it will make our businesses stronger. I referenced in my earlier comments blended finance. I'll just reinforce the importance of those efforts, including through the World Bank and beyond. But I want to highlight a few other issues before my time is up. First, the importance of high-integrity, standardized carbon markets that have the potential to shift capital flows to those most affected by climate change, including being integrated with JETPs, such as the JETP here, changing the incentives and the financial calculations to decarbonize. I'd suggest that we can catalyze enormous private sector demand for these credits by committing AI data center development to be carbon neutral. We need a price on carbon. I salute my neighbor, the European Union, in pricing carbon and putting in place a CBAM. I'm going to conclude by drawing attention to the situation of one of the members around this table, and I hope Prime Minister Holness of Jamaica will allow me. The economic cost of Hurricane Melissa is about 40% of Jamaica's GDP. Now, through remarkable discipline, Jamaica had reduced their debt to GDP by over 50 percentage points in recent years. That is all gone with the explosive hurricane. This demonstrates the importance of investing in resilience in advance, the importance of catastrophic risk insurance, and the reality of what climate change is doing to our countries. I salute the ambition of the G20 presidency, Turkey for hosting COP alongside Australia next year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The challenge that Jamaica faced is a really sad story. And putting the figures that you have, Prime Minister Carney, just makes the case much more a devastating one. Your Excellencies, I am receiving requests for countries who want to forgo their right to speak. That is very welcome because that shortens our list so that we can finish in time to go and have the time to have the dinner that has been prepared. So if any country is moved to follow the same example as the United Kingdom and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, who have forgone their right to speak, please do indicate so that we do not have to call you up. My next speaker who will be making an intervention is His Excellency, the Premier of the People's Republic of China, His Excellency Li Qiang. Please take the floor.
谢谢拉马福萨总统，各位同事，当前气候变、能源、粮食等多种挑战叠加，尤其需要国际社会以团结凝聚力量，靠协作破解难题。G20应当发扬伙伴精神，展现更加积极的政治意愿，推动更为广泛的国际合作，共同应对挑战，合力推进发展。第一，加强生态环保合作，提升发展韧性。气候和生态问题关系全人类的长远发展。这些年，全球极端天气等事件频发，实施巴黎协定目标时间紧迫，任重道远。G20应当秉持科学精神，坚持共同但有区别的责任原则，体现担当，抓紧行动。中国已经宣布新一轮国家自主贡献的目标，我愿意同各方加强昆明、蒙特利尔全球生物多样性框架的之内的合作，推动第30届联合国气变大会成果加快落地。第二，加强绿色能源合作，推进公正转型，太阳能、风能等新能源天然具有普惠公平的特点，推动能源体系绿色转型，不仅为人类发展提供强劲动能，也将更好地保障各国平等发展的权利。G20应当推动全球绿色产业合作，保持产业链、供应链的稳定畅通，促进相关技术、产品等自由流通应用。中国已经建成全球最大的可再生能源体系，我们同100多个国家和地区开展了绿色能源合作。过去5年，向世界提供的风电、光伏产品，累计为其他国家减少约41亿吨的碳排放。中方愿意继续以自身所能为各国能源转型提供支持。第三，加强粮食安全合作，保障稳定供应。现在全球仍然有7亿多人面临饥饿的威胁，必须采取切实行动，为他们提供必要的帮助。G20应当推动优化全球粮食流通供给，构建大宗商品合作伙伴关系，建设开放、稳定、可持续的全球粮食市场，强化对粮食短缺国家的供应保障。同时，我们要用好 G20农业部长会等相关平台，加强农业科技合作，提升粮食生产能力。中方也愿意同各国一起推动落实国际粮食安全合作倡议，为抗击饥饿与贫困做出新的贡献。谢谢大家。
Thank you, Premier Lee. I now ask His Excellency Antonio Costa, the President of the European Council, to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Natural and man-made disasters are happening more and more often. They are increasing in intensity and having devastating consequences worldwide. The threat to our communities, our environment, and our prosperity is very real. Take the case of wildfires. In 2025 alone, the equivalent of 1/3 of land size of Argentina has burned down. The European Union strongly supports the approach, priorities, and efforts of the South African presidency of G20 on disaster risk reduction, the ex-post approach. But in this session, I choose to talk about root causes. Yes, climate change is real, and together with biodiversity loss and pollution, it can still be stopped. Despite progress, global pledges to cut emissions are not sufficient to limit the rise of temperatures to 1.5 degrees warming. The European Union is a global leader in this effort, and we are staying the course, fully committed to the Paris Agreement. A couple of weeks ago, we committed to an ambitious intermediate goal of reducing emissions by 90% by 2040. The European Union will remain a trusted partner in supporting the countries most exposed to climate change. Last year, the European Union provided 31.7 billion euros from public sources, and we mobilized 11 billion euros of private finance to support developing countries to reduce emissions and adapt to the impacts of climate change. As Union of Values, we will continue to support this agenda. But we cannot do this alone, and we invite all G20 members to join us in taking bold collective action to secure a sustainable future for all.
Thank you, thank you. I now ask Her Excellency Dr. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, to take the floor.
Thank you very much, dear Cyril. This time I want to speak about the same topic like my friend Antonio Costa, climate change, but here focus on energy transitions. And it is a message of hope and opportunity that I want to bring to this G20 summit. It's a message about clean energy technologies and clean energy transitions. Not only do they meet our urgent need to tackle climate change, they do much more than that. Clean energy transitions are cost competitive as never before. They create jobs at home. They open new ways to bring modern energy to the many million that remain without access. And they are a natural fit for many developing economies. The International Energy Agency says that 80% of energy consumption growth over the next decade occurs in regions with high-quality solar resources. And it's not only about solar. There are huge opportunities in Africa and beyond for other technologies, for wind, for geothermal, for hydropower, for new low-emission fuels, and of course for the investments in grids, storage, and other infrastructure that tie the energy system together. So this can be the growth story of the 21st century. And therefore, I would like to assure you of two things. First, I want to assure you of Europe's commitment to lead by example. We are firmly on track to meet our own 2030 target. We have an ambitious NDC for 2035. And we have the goal to be climate neutral by 2050, so Europe is staying the course. Second, I want to assure you of Europe's commitment to partner with developing economies, to mobilize investments in clean energy around the world. And here, let me give you 4 figures that are telling. Of the 2 trillion invested globally in clean energy last year, only 2% was in Africa, while Africa has 600 million people who have no access to electricity, and it is the continent with 60% of the world's best solar potential. So this cannot be. We must change this imbalance. And that is at the core of Europe's Global Gateway Initiative. These are 150 billion euros investment program for Africa, of which 25% goes into grids and into interconnectors. And that is also why, together with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, my friend, we launched the campaign called Scaling Up Renewables for Africa. Yesterday, we had a big pledging event. We're working with governments and the private sector, and thank you to many, many of you around the table who contributed to the pledging event. We reached 15.5 billion euros pledges for investment in renewables in Africa. A big success, and many thanks again for that. Thank you.
Thank you for passing on that message, Ursula. I now would like to call upon His Excellency President Emmanuel Macron, the President of the French Republic.
So it's only me, Mr. President. I'm the Finance Minister. I'm going to give the introduction in the name of President Macron, who just is at a meeting now. Thank you. Je remercie l'Afrique du Sud d'avoir mis à l'agenda la question de la résilience de ce monde que nous avons en commun. Nous avons ce matin parlé de nos économies, mais nous ne devons pas oublier nos biens communs. Les défis et les dangers qui menacent notre planète ne peuvent être traités que collectivement, ensemble. Les effets du changement climatique, la dégradation de l'environnement, les pollutions, la perte de biodiversité, la multiplication des catastrophes climatiques et l'impact de ces facteurs sur les systèmes alimentaires sont interconnectés, avec des conséquences claires sur nos économies et nos sociétés, quand le développement et la croissance sont des facteurs de paix. Nous avons tous à perdre à choisir l'affrontement ou le repli sur soi plutôt que la coopération. Refuser de s'attaquer au changement climatique, de bâtir un monde capable de résister aux catastrophes naturelles, de travailler à des systèmes alimentaires performants ou de coopérer en matière de santé, c'est nous fragiliser collectivement. Je me félicite donc de l'adoption par nos ministres de principes de haut niveau sur le financement de la réduction des risques de catastrophes qui soulignent notre volonté commune d'agir plus tôt et de reconstruire de manière plus durable. À l'image des catastrophes naturelles de plus en plus nombreuses à cause du changement climatique, les pandémies ne connaissent pas de frontières. Je me réjouis donc de l'accord mondial sur la prévention, la préparation et la riposte face aux pandémies. Cette adoption représente une victoire claire pour le multilatéralisme. C'est une avancée majeure pour notre sécurité sanitaire qui consacre pour la première fois dans le droit international l'approche une seule santé, One Health. Cette approche, elle doit être notre boussole pour promouvoir l'inclusion systématique des enjeux de santé animale et de santé de nos écosystèmes pour élaborer des politiques publiques vertueuses. L'engagement de la France se traduit par le One Health Summit que nous accueillerons à Lyon le 7 avril prochain. Ce sommet doit parvenir à des engagements ambitieux, des solutions innovantes et des initiatives concrètes pour répondre de façon durable aux problèmes prioritaires touchant la santé quotidienne de nos populations. La santé ne peut en effet plus se penser sans la sécurité alimentaire ni une alimentation saine, car l'obésité est en train de devenir une pandémie. Rien n'est possible sans accès à l'alimentation, ni l'éducation, essentielle pour une croissance économique durable, ni la paix, ni même le progrès démocratique. C'est la raison pour laquelle nous restons pleinement engagés à l'instar de notre coprésidence de la Coalition pour l'alimentation scolaire du Programme alimentaire mondial et de l'accueil du sommet Nutrition for Growth, qui a confirmé la forte mobilisation politique sur ces enjeux avec des engagements financiers à hauteur de 30 milliards de dollars. Et c'est pour ça également que cette question sera au cœur du sommet Africa Forward, organisé par notre partenaire kényan en mai 2026 à Nairobi. Cher Président Ramaphosa, chers collègues, la France continuera à porter ce multilatéralisme fondé sur la science de Johannesburg à Lyon, en passant par Nairobi, pour qu'ensemble nous puissions faire face aux nombreux défis environnementaux et sanitaires à venir.
Thank you. I now want to give the opportunity His Excellency Friedrich Merz, the Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany.
Thanks, you, Chair. Unfortunately, the Chancellor's in a meeting, and also the Finance Minister of Germany is speaking. And thank you, President Ramaphosa, first of all, for putting resilience on the top of our agenda. 2025 has tested our resilience and global stability. There is war and conflict, and communities have been tested by the increasing impact of climate change. Wildfires and floods destroying homes in many of our countries. And heat waves threaten our health, food and water supplies, and energy security. It's a heavy burden both for our economies and societies, and even more in so fragile regions and the most vulnerable countries. This is why we need to act. Our actions need to make our world more resilient by unlocking growth and protecting the climate at the same time. We should create the right conditions to create more business cases for action. Protecting the climate and creating business opportunities can and must go hand in hand. To make this happen, we need to use all technologies available. And we need to give space for new technologies to emerge. With the right market framework, new technologies can become the most attractive option for providers and for consumers. Energy transition works best when businesses and end users benefit. For example, in the first half of this year, more than a third of global electricity was produced by renewables. Germany supports the transition towards secure, affordable, and clean energy at home and abroad. In this regard, I want to highlight our Just Energy Transition partnership with South Africa. In this partnership, we exchange skills and technology. Over the last years, South Africa has emerged as a global leader in clean hydrogen, leveraging its huge energy potential and mineral resources. This can benefit countries that are energy importers, and it helps build overall resilience. We are happy to further continue on this energy trajectory with other African countries. Germany is also supporting the initiatives Scaling Up Renewables in Africa, launched by the EU and South Africa with more than 2 billion euros. Beyond creating the right framework, our cooperation is the key sector, with the private sector is key. This is the second lever. If we want to increase our resilience, we need to mobilize the flow of private capital. There are still too many structural barriers politically and economically. This discourages private investments globally, but in particular in Africa. This is why Chancellor Friedrich Merz and also President Ramaphosa just kicked off the initiatives Compact with Africa 2.0. By pushing reforms, members of the Compact help their businesses to attract private investment in the energy sector, but also beyond. And with G20 partners, we launched the scaled initiatives last year. We are working together with leading insurance companies on blended finance to allow the private sector to invest in an easier and more efficient way. We should take these kinds of initiatives forward. Let us work together to leverage innovation and investment for a resilient world, just as we set out when we founded the G20 back in 2008. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We welcome that. I now want to call Her Excellency Ms. Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, we all know no one can tackle alone global challenges as climate change and the vulnerability of food systems. As members of the G20, we have a shared responsibility to find a way forward but we also know that way forward must be based on common sense. In my opinion, we must abandon once and for all the ideological dogmatism that is causing more harm than good. In Europe, for example, choices have been made in the past that have brought entire productive sector to their knees without producing any real benefit in terms of global emissions. And in Africa, dogmatic approaches imposed by foreign partners that do not take into account the specificities of African nations paradoxically risk reinforcing all patterns of dependency. This is a losing strategy. So a pragmatic balance must be found between the need to limit emissions and the risk of compromising the most advanced productive systems and preventing the weaker ones from establishing themselves. In our opinion, the challenge is to affirm the principle of technological neutrality, because there is no single solution capable of quickly building a solid alternative to fossil fuel supplies, but also because this spurs research, innovation, and virtuous competition. The energy mix must be balanced and must combine all available technologies: renewable gas, hydrogen, biofuels, CO2 capture systems, as well as research into nuclear fusion, which would change history by producing clean, safe, and unlimited energy. This is the approach that inspires Italy and to which we contribute with industrial expertise, technological capabilities, new financial instruments, and cooperation with other nations. For example, we've launched investments in Africa worth a total of almost 2.5 billion euros, financing projects ranging from the construction of large renewable energy plants to innovative solutions for production and storage. And also on food systems, Italy continues to do its part. We co-organized the last United Nations Summit on food systems with Ethiopia. We are making our agri-food know-how available to our African partners, and we are building public-private partnerships with them that guarantee concrete results. We are successfully working on this, for example, in Algeria, where we are working together to reclaim over 36,000 hectares of desert to produce up of 45,000 tons more cereals and legumes per year, generating benefits for over 600,000 people. And we are now replying this experiment in Senegal, Ghana, and Congo, and aim to involve other nations on the continent. But I want to be clear while closing my remarks. Our goal is not to create dependency. Our goal is to support self-sufficiency, because we believe in dignity of people, we believe in the freedom of nations, and we believe in the strength of genuine partnerships. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you so much, my sister, Giorgia Meloni. I now ask His Excellency, President of the Republic of Korea, Mr. Lee Jae-myung, to take the floor. Okay, I'm sure he's in a bilateral somewhere. I then ask His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Turkey, His Excellency Recep Tayyip Erdogan, to take the floor. There are lots of bilaterals taking place at this time, and now I move on to His Excellency, the Prime Minister of the Republic of India, His Excellency Narendra Modi. Excellency Erdogan is there. My apologies. We'll get...
Saygıdeğer devlet ve hükümet başkanları, kıymetli delegeler, sabahki oturumumuzda ifade olunduğu üzere doğal salgınlar, iklim değişikliği ve afetler gibi yeni sınamalarla karşı karşıya kalıyoruz. 6 Şubat 2023'te yaşadığımız ve asrın felaketi olarak isimlendirdiğimiz yıkıcı depremlerin ardından dünyanın en büyük inşa operasyonunu yürütüyoruz. Bu çerçevede 350.000. konut ve iş yerinin teslimini geçtiğimiz günlerde gerçekleştirdik. Geriye kalan 100.000 ünitenin tamamlanmasıyla 4 yıldan kısa bir süre içinde dünyanın en büyük inşa faaliyetlerinden birini tamamlamış olacağız. Bu süreçte sergilediğimiz dayanıklılık, Türkiye ekonomisinin nedenli sağlam temellere sahip olduğunu bir kez daha ortaya koymuştur. Diğer yandan iklim krizinin menfi etkilerinin en yoğun hissedildiği ülkeler arasındayız. 2025 yılında karşı karşıya kaldığımız zirai don ve ardından şiddetli kuraklık hem gıda fiyatlarında hem de enerji arzında büyük baskılar doğurdu. Yaşadığımız her acı tecrübe iklim değişikliğiyle mücadeleye, sürdürülebilir kalkınmaya, gıda, su güvenliğini güçlendirmeye önem vermemiz gerektiğini gösteriyor. Geçtiğimiz aylarda kabul edilen iklim kanunumuz 2053 yılında net sıfır emisyona ulaşma ve yeşil kalkınma hedefimizi gerçekleştirme noktasında önemli bir dönüm noktasını teşkil ediyor. Kanun kapsamında ayrıca temiz teknoloji yatırımlarının artırılması ve tüm sektörler için adil dönüşümün finansman olarak desteklenmesini amaçlıyoruz. 2035 yılına kadar güneş ve rüzgar enerjisi kapasitemizi mevcudun 4 katına çıkarmayı öngörüyoruz. Şimdiden bu yıl itibariyle toplam kurulu güç içerisinde yenilenebilir enerjinin payını %60'ın üzerine çıkarmış durumdayız. Ayrıca Birleşmiş Milletler'in desteğiyle küresel bir çevre hareketine dönen sıfır atık projesiyle birlikte çevresel konularda çalışmalarımızı güçlendiriyoruz. Bu düşüncelerle Birleşmiş Milletler İklim Değişikliği Çerçeve Sözleşmesi 31. Taraflar Konferansı'nı önümüzdeki sene Kasım ayında Türkiye'de düzenlemeyi planlıyoruz. Son dönemde çok taraflılığın kaybettiği zemin dikkate alındığında bu hususta Avustralya ile sağladığımız mutabakatı çok daha anlamlı buluyorum. Ayrıca Güney Afrika Dönem Başkanlığı'nın gıda güvenliği konusundaki çalışmalarını takdirle karşılıyoruz. G20 olarak gıda güvenliğini tesis etme noktasındaki çabalarımızı önümüzdeki dönemde artırmamızın çok isabetli olacağına gönülden inanıyorum. Tabii tüm bu gayretlerin ekonomik maliyeti çok yüksektir. Bilhassa gelişmekte olan ülkelerin ihtiyaçlarına cevap verecek bir finansman sisteminin hayata geçirilmesi gerektiğine inanıyorum. Değerli dostlarım, Amerikan Başkanı Sayın Trump'ın girişimleri ve önde gelen bölge ülkelerinin katkılarıyla Gazze'de sağlanan ateşkesin devamı sadece Filistin halkı için değil, tüm dünyanın huzuru için azami önemlidir. Birleşmiş Milletler verilerine göre İsrail'in Gazze'de yol açtığı yıkım, Filistin'in kalkınma çabalarını asgari 70 yıl geriye götürmüştür. Gazze'de maalesef sadece üst yapının değil, çevrenin de yıkımına şahit olduk. 70.000'i aşkın çocuk, kadın ve masum yetişkinin kaybının ise ne telafisi ne de gelecek nesillerin dimağında açtığı yaranın silinmesi mümkündür. Gelinen aşamada Gazze'de hem insani yardım faaliyetlerinin hızlandırılması hem de yeniden inşa faaliyetlerine gecikmeksizin başlanması esas olmalıdır. Birleşmiş Milletler kuruluşlarının Gazze'de insani yardımların koordinasyonundaki rolünü vazgeçilmez görüyoruz. Öte yandan kış şartlarıyla birlikte bilhassa barınma sorununun giderilmesinde zemin aleyhimize işliyor. Biz sahadaki ateşkesin sürmesine ve Gazze'nin yeniden inşasına katkı sunmaya şimdiye kadar olduğu üzere Filistin halkının yanında durmaya kararlıyız, hazırız. Kalıcı barışın yegane yolu olan iki devletli çözüm için uluslararası toplum olarak çabalarımızı sürdürmemiz gerektiğini bir kez daha vurguluyor. Bu düşüncelerle sizleri saygıyla selamlıyorum. Thank you.
Thank you, President Erdogan. My apologies for ignoring you the first time. Now I ask the Prime Minister of the Republic of India, His Excellency Mr. Narendra Modi.
Excellencies, नेचुरल डिजास्टर्स मानवता के लिए बहुत बड़ी चुनौती बने हुए हैं। इस वर्ष भी प्राकृतिक आपदाओं ने दुनिया की बहुत बड़ी आबादी को प्रभावित किया है। इससे स्पष्ट है कि प्राकृतिक आपदाओं से निपटने के लिए ग्लोबल कोऑपरेशन को हमें और मजबूत करना होगा। इसी सोच के साथ भारत ने अपनी G20 प्रेसिडेंसी के दौरान डिजास्टर रिस्क रिडक्शन वर्किंग ग्रुप की स्थापना की थी। इस महत्वपूर्ण एजेंडा को प्राथमिकता के साथ आगे बढ़ाने के लिए मैं साउथ अफ्रीका को बधाई देता हूं। फ्रेंड, डिजास्टर रेजिलियंस को लेकर हमारी अप्रोच रिस्पॉन्स सेंट्रिक से भी आगे डेवलपमेंट सेंट्रिक होनी चाहिए। कोalition फॉर डिजास्टर रेजिलिएंट इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की स्थापना के पीछे भारत की यही सोच थी। G20 देश CDRI के साथ मिलकर फाइनेंस, टेक्नोलॉजी और स्किल डेवलपमेंट को मोबिलाइज कर सकते हैं। ये एक रेजिलिएंट फ्यूचर की गारंटी बन सकता है। फ्रेंड्स, भारत का ये भी मानना है कि स्पेस टेक्नोलॉजी से पूरी मानवता को लाभ हो। इसलिए भारत G20 ओपन सैटेलाइट डेटा पार्टनरशिप का सुझाव सामने रख रहा है। इससे G20 देशों के स्पेस एजेंसियों का सैटेलाइट डेटा और एनालिसिस ग्लोबल साउथ के देशों के लिए अधिक सुलभ, इंटरऑपरेबल और उपयोगी बनाया जा सकता है। फ्रेंड्स, ग्लोबल ग्रोथ के लिए सस्टेनेबिलिटी और क्लीन एनर्जी जरूरी है। ये सुनिश्चित करने के लिए क्रिटिकल मिनरल्स का बहुत बड़ा रोल है। ये मानवता की साझी संपदा है। इसलिए भारत G20 क्रिटिकल मिनरल्स सर्कुलेटरी इनिशिएटिव का प्रस्ताव रखता है। इसके तहत रिसाइकलिंग, अर्बन माइनिंग और सेकेंड लाइफ बैटरी जैसे इनोवेशन को बढ़ावा दिया जा सकता है। सर्कुलेटरी में इन्वेस्टमेंट होगी तो प्राइमरी माइनिंग पर निर्भरता कम रहेगी। इससे सप्लाई चेन पर भी दबाव कम होगा और नेचर के लिए भी ये अच्छा रहेगा। ये इनिशिएटिव ज्वाइंट रिसर्च टेक्नोलॉजी स्टैंडर्ड्स और ग्लोबल साउथ के पायलट रिसाइकलिंग फैसिलिटीज को सपोर्ट कर सकता है। फ्रेंड्स, नई दिल्ली G20 समिट के दौरान हमने संकल्प लिया था कि 2030 तक रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी को 3 गुना और एनर्जी एफिशिएंसी रेट को 2 गुना करेंगे। इस लक्ष्य को हासिल करने के लिए विकसित देशों को अफोर्डेबल क्लाइमेट फाइनेंस और टेक्नोलॉजी उपलब्ध कराने के लिए अपने कमिटमेंट्स को टाइम बाउंड तरीके से पूरा करना होगा। फ्रेंड्स, क्लाइमेट चेंज और अन्य चुनौतियों के कारण हमारे एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर और फूड सिक्योरिटी पर खतरा और गंभीर होता जा रहा है। कई देशों में किसानों के लिए फर्टिलाइजर्स, टेक्नोलॉजी, क्रेडिट, इंश्योरेंस और मार्केट एक्सेस की चुनौती बढ़ती जा रही है। भारत अपने स्तर पर इन चुनौतियों से निपटने का प्रयास कर रहा है। भारत में हम विश्व का सबसे बड़ा फूड सिक्योरिटी और न्यूट्रिशन सपोर्ट प्रोग्राम चला रहे हैं। विश्व का सबसे बड़ा हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस प्रोग्राम और सबसे बड़ी फसल बीमा योजना भी भारत चला रहा है। हम श्री अन्न यानी मिलेट्स पर बल दे रहे हैं, जो पोषण और पर्यावरण दोनों के लिए सुपर फूड है। दिल्ली G20 के दौरान इन सभी विषयों पर हमने डेकन प्रिंसिपल्स पर सहमति बनाई थी। अब हमें इन प्रिंसिपल्स पर आगे बढ़ते हुए एक G20 रोड मैप बनाना चाहिए। फ्रेंड्स, रेजिलियंस कैन नॉट बिल्ड इन साइलोस। G20 को ऐसी कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव स्ट्रेटेजी को बढ़ावा देना चाहिए जो न्यूट्रिशन, पब्लिक हेल्थ, सस्टेनेबल एग्रीकल्चर और डिजास्टर प्रिपेयर्डनेस को जोड़कर एक मजबूत वैश्विक सुरक्षा बनाए। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
Thank you. I now ask Mr. Masanao Ozaki from the Republic of Japan to speak on behalf of the Prime Minister.
Thank you, Chairman. 日本は課題先進国としての知見や経験を生かし、これまで災害、感染症、気候変動といった地球規模課題の解決に向け、各国の要望に基づいた取り組みを有言実行で実施してまいりました。第一に防災について、世界各地では自然災害が激甚化頻発化しており、持続的で強靭な社会の構築には災害対策が待ったなしであります。災害リスクの理解、防災投資、対応、とりわけ災害リスク削減のためのインフラ強靭化が重要であります。自然災害の多い日本は、世界一の防災大国を目指しています。日本はその知恵と技術を共有し、仙台防災枠組みの実施など、国際協力を主導してきました。アフリカやアジアでは、テクノロジーも活用し、干ばつ対策、サイクロンシェルター整備、気象予報にかかる能力構築支援といったハード・ソフト両面の協力を行っています。また、自然災害は被災国、特に低所得国や島諸国の財政にも悪影響を及ぼし、迅速な復旧を妨げるため、日本は各地の災害リスクファイナンスの整備支援も主導しています。第2に、気候変動について、世界の気温上昇を工業化以前から 1.5 度以内に抑えるには、先進国のみならず、主要排出国をはじめ、国際社会が団結して取り組むことが必要であります。日本は引き続き、国内外の気候変動対策に取り組んでいきます。第3に、海洋の環境問題について、日本は多くの国が参加する実効的な条約の早期策定に向け、関係国の橋渡しを行っていきます。第4に、国際保険について、ワクチン支援を含む新型コロナ対応は、G20 との効果的な協力の代表例であります。国際保険は、国際社会全体の経済、社会、安全保障上の重要な課題であり、日本はユニバーサルヘルスカバレッジの達成に向け、来月には UHC ハイレベルフォーラムを東京で開催し、世界銀行、WHO のナレッジハブでの人材育成を含め、国際保険を力強く推進します。第5に、エネルギー移行について、安価で安定的なエネルギー供給やエネルギー安全保障の確保は極めて重要です。日本は アジアゼロエミッション共同体 AZEC など脱炭素化、経済成長、エネルギー安全保障を同時に実現し、多様な道筋の下でネットゼロを目指す取り組みを力強く推進していきます。最後に食料安全保障について、強靭で持続可能な農業・食料システムを構築するために、日本は各地域の実情に応じた生産力の強化に向けた支援を行ってまいります。日本は引き続き、各国と知見と経験を共有し、相手国の主体性を尊重した実用的な支援を行ってまいります。ご清聴ありがとうございました。
Thank you. Thank you. I'd now like to call His Excellency Mr. Gibran Raka Buming Raka, the Vice President of Indonesia.
Your Excellency, President Ramaphosa, Excellencies, leaders of G20 countries, in many parts of the world, crises are intensifying. Global solidarity and decisive leadership are needed to address them. Indonesia commends South Africa's leadership in advancing energy, water, and food security. For Indonesia, food security is not just an economic agenda, but a fundamental necessity for our people. For that reason, the President of Indonesia is focusing on the food security and free nutritious meals for 80 million students and pregnant women as strategic investment. That promotes the use of local products, empowering farmers and livestock breeders, while expanding economic activity in many areas. On the other hand, as an island nation located in the Pacific Ring of Fire, Indonesia faces more than 3,000 disasters every year, from earthquakes, floods, to volcanic eruption. For Indonesia, resilience is not a slogan, it is a daily reality. Drawing from these experiences, Indonesia promotes the concept of sustainable resilience, a framework in which human development, economic growth, and environmental protection can advance in harmony. Excellencies, today's disasters are not only natural, many are the results of human action. We see this in Gaza, Ukraine, Sudan, and the Sahel, and many other regions, where conflicts reduce homes to rubble, deprive people of hopes and livelihood. These tragedies remind us to put humanity at the heart of global governance. The world must not allow and normalize preventable human suffering from becoming the new normal. As a forum representing 85% of the world's GDP, the G20 carries a moral duty to lead by example, ensuring that growth and resilience become two sides of the same coin, driving hope, prosperity, and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I now want to call the President of the Republic of Korea, Mr. Lee Jae-myung.
네, 의장님 감사합니다. 근본 세션의 주제는 각각 다른 주제 같지만 상호 연결된 하나의 체계적 위험 요인입니다. 유엔 재해위험 경감국이 지적하는 것처럼 여러 분야에서 연쇄적으로 나타나는 복합 위기입니다. 그러나 우리가 충격을 적절히 흡수하고 복원력을 강화하면 새로운 기회가 창출되고 또 새로운 성장 기반이 마련될 것입니다. 이를 위해서 먼저 국제사회는 기후위기 대응 노력을 지속해서 강화해야 합니다. 대한민국은 국제사회의 노력에 동참하기 위해서 2035년 온실가스 감축 목표와 중장기 기후 탄력적 발전 경로를 확정했습니다. 우리 정부는 기후변화 대응을 위한 국제사회의 여정에 책임 있는 일원으로서 함께할 것입니다. 둘째로, 재난위험 대응은 예방 중심, 보건력 중심으로 재편되어야 합니다. 올해 G20 재난위험 경감 강요회의가 다중재난 조기 경보 체계를 도입한 것은 매우 적절합니다. 대한민국 역시 누구나 소외되지 않고 재난 위협으로부터 안전한 미래를 만들기 위해서 노력하고 있고, 아시아 태평양 국가들에게 홍수 조기 경보 체계 구축 등 재난 위험 저감 사업을 지원하고 있습니다. 대한민국은 G20 회원국 여러분과 함께 재난 대응 보건력 강화를 위한 노력에 적극 동참할 것입니다. 셋째, 에너지 전환 과정에서 보건력 높은 인프라 시스템에 적극 투자해야 합니다. 대한민국은 기후위기 대응과 녹색 산업 성장을 위해서 재생에너지를 기반으로 에너지 고속도로를 추진 중입니다. 해상풍력 클러스터와 분산형 전력망 구축을 확대하고 국민 모두에게 혜택을 주는 햇빛소득, 바람소득 공유 모델도 확산시켜 나가고 있습니다. 마지막으로 글로벌 식량 체제 보건력 강화를 위해서 국제사회가 연대와 협력을 지속해야 합니다. 한국은 UN 세계 식량 계획과 식량 원조 사업을 17개국으로 확대하고 아프리카 14개국의 K 라이스벨트 사업을 추진해 왔습니다. 앞으로도 국제사회의 연대와 협력 강화에 앞장설 것입니다. 존경하는 동료 여러분, 아프리카 속담처럼 비는 한 지붕에만 내리지는 않습니다. G20는 2008년 금융위기, 2020년 팬데믹 위기에 세계 경제 회복을 이끌어냈습니다. 기후, 재난, 에너지, 식량의 복합 위기 또한 그때와 같은 책임감 있는 연대를 필요로 합니다. 한 국가의 회복력은 전 세계의 회복력으로 이어집니다. 위험을 사전에 낮추고 충격에 흔들리지 않으며 더 나은 상태로 회복할 수 있는 글로벌 체계를 함께 구축하는 데 대한민국이 앞장서서 기여하겠습니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you. Thank you. I now call upon His Excellency the Deputy Prime Minister of the Russian Federation, Mr. Maxim Oreshkin.
Thank you, President Ramaphosa. I will start with reminding a personal story of Bill Gates, the renowned Microsoft co-founder. He was an early and outspoken advocate for the urgency of climate change, investing billions in clean energy solutions. Recently, he softened his stance, emphasizing human welfare and balanced policy over alarmist views, where funding for health and development plays the leading role. It happens sometimes that the positions of key figures can change, and the country policy also can change amid evolving conditions and priorities. However, tactics should not dominate the strategy. We stand for long-term and balanced development, aiming at sustainable progress that benefits all equitably. Global climate policy should be reasonable, not dogmatized. It should be focused on ensuring access to technologies and finance. It should also be cost-effective. Energy transitions should be both clean and affordable. Zero and low-emission technologies, including natural gas, nuclear, and hydropower, play a pivotal role in energy transitions, especially here in Africa, where 500 million people do not have access to electricity. Technologically neutral approach is needed to advance decarbonization without compromising economic growth and SDG 7, access to energy for all. CO2 removal solutions, natural sinks, are not less effective than mitigation, while most affordable and also scalable. Energy policies must ensure energy security and be aligned with structural shifts in global energy demand. The expansion of digital economy, including AI, blockchain, big data, is driving electricity demand comparable to heavy industry. We need to develop new generation capacities located near resource bases and consumers. Food systems, energy, climate change, and disaster resilience are integral parts of one global resilience platform. Global South and Global East play a crucial role in providing food and energy to the world due to their vast agricultural resources and abundant natural reserves, thus contributing to food and energy security. What is also needed for global food security is fair competition and open trade. Well-functioning markets are a key factor to eliminate hunger worldwide. Just to mention that despite illegitimate sanctions, Russia is among the world's major exporters of food and fertilizers, and about 97% of our supplies go to developing nations, of which more than 40% go to low-income countries. Even amidst the background of sanctions that indirectly affect even food supplies, Russia fulfills its mission of contributing to global food security. As for the G20's mission, it is not only to respond to shocks, but to design a future architecture that is balanced and shock resilient. So, global resilience today must go beyond crisis response. It also has to be platform-based. Climate change, disaster risk reduction, and energy transitions are intertwined and should be addressed collectively. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you indeed. I now wish to call upon Minister of Foreign Affairs of Argentina, Pablo Quirno Magrain.
Thank you, President Ramaphosa, for placing these critical issues not only for the stability of our economies, but also for the well-being of our populations, particularly the most vulnerable. During periods of catastrophes and crisis, the solidarity of nations is most evident. History has shown that despite diverse worldviews, the G20 has served as a platform for cooperation in the most challenging moments of recent history, successfully reaching consensus and coordinating actions and tasks collectively. Disaster prevention cannot be limited to statements. It requires concrete action and effective collaboration with the most vulnerable nations. It is essential to provide technology, materials, expertise, and skilled personnel to develop safe infrastructure and mitigate damage. An efficient approach is to share resources when and where they are needed, coordinating among countries in a practical, bureaucracy-free manner. Disasters tend to occur in predictable seasons and regions. Therefore, international agreements must move from words to clear commitments with specified contributions and shared responsibility, ensuring that solidarity goes beyond good intentions. Allow me to move on to my next point. Food security must be addressed through mechanisms that do not reduce global food production and investment. Argentina is a major food producer, and under market conditions free from distortions caused by domestic and international policies, it could double and diversify its production. Many countries have implemented domestic policies aimed at lowering consumer prices, which have led to stagnation or declines in production. This effect is not only caused by domestic public policies, but also by international ones. Food markets are competitive, meaning there is a good balance between quality and price. Distorting them through subsidies or prohibitions only harms those who need food the most, because higher production would correspond to lower prices. For this reason, Argentina fights against market distortions, against barriers to food trade, and against subsidies that distort competition. That is why we promote long-term contracts to supply countries that regularly import food, as well as strategic partnerships that ensure food security. Hunger is addressed by increasing food production, not by reducing it through measures that only stagnate it. We're here to cooperate by producing, integrating stable value chains, and selling at highly competitive prices and quality for the benefit of consumers around the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. My last speaker on the G20 member side is Her Excellency, Minister of Finance and Public Credit, United Mexican States, Edgar Amador Zamora.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We gather today not only as representatives of our nations, but as partners in the pursuit of a resilient and sustainable world. As we reflect on the challenges that we have faced, be it the global pandemic, extreme weather events linked to climate change, or market financial volatility, we must recognize the pivotal role that the G20 plays in fostering collaboration and resilience among our nations. Together, we have the power to shape a future that prioritizes the well-being of our people and our planet. Investing in disaster risk reduction protects development gains, reduces vulnerabilities, strengthens adaptation to climate change, and promotes economic and social stability. Disaster risk reduction is at the heart of development, advancing the 2030 agenda and safeguarding its achievements. Mexico welcomes South Africa's leadership and vision in this area so that the G20 can contribute significantly to positioning resilience as a global public good and as an indispensable condition for sustainable development. The G20 provides a forum for dialogue that highlights the importance of integrating disaster risk reduction into development planning, public investment, and international cooperation. Discussion within the group reflects a growing consensus. There will be no sustainable development or effective adaptation to climate change without proper management of present and future risks. Mexico particularly values the G20's promotion of common approaches on issues such as early warning systems, resilient infrastructure, and resilient financing. Those efforts contribute to strengthening the global coherence that must be fostered among the development, climate, and risk agendas. Following the recent COP30 in Belém do Pará, Brazil, the G20 had the opportunity to reaffirm its collective commitment at the highest political level to the goals of the Paris Agreement and to strengthen a more ambitious and equitable global response to the climate crisis. The G20 must send a message of unity and ambition, reaffirming the group's leadership in achieving a fair and sustainable global transition that leaves no one behind. Mexico has consistently played an active and constructive role in international climate negotiations, working to build bridges, promote consensus, and uphold key principles such as equity, intergenerational justice, and the centrality of human rights in climate action. The just energy transition is not merely a goal, it is a moral imperative that requires our collective commitment and action. The Mexican people have faced prolonged droughts, intensified hurricanes, disrupted rains, and biodiversity losses. Through our updated nationally determined contribution, Mexico will strengthen its renewable energy and sustainable transport goals, expand nature-based solutions such as the restoration of forests, mangroves, and coastal systems, prioritize community-centered adaptation, and include security as an across-the-board issue linked to climate action. We believe that a just energy transition should encompass the following 4 key principles: inclusion, job creation and skills development, investment in clean technologies, and support for communities. To advance towards sustainable and resilient food system, Mexico has implemented technical support actions through farmer field schools to increase production with an agroecological approach. We also established new seed banks dedicated to the preservation of traditional food systems, which contributed to the selection, conservation, and safeguarding of native corn varieties. Finally, the efficient use of water in food production is a strategic issue. Therefore, we implemented the National Irrigation Technology Program, which includes training and technological assistance to producers to recover volumes for other uses. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you indeed. We've now concluded the interventions by G20 members. We now have guest countries that have chosen to make interventions. As we have run out of time, we propose that we allow interventions right up till 6:45. And beyond 6:45, those who have not spoken will then be given the opportunity into the 3rd session tomorrow. We anticipate that we should be able to finish in time tomorrow. So if by 6:45 we have not given you the opportunity to speak, there will be ample opportunity for you to make your intervention tomorrow. We say this as we have some 500 guests who are coming in for the dinner, which we are all invited to, and we should not keep them waiting too long. But besides, we've been at this since 10 o'clock this morning, if not earlier, and I am told that it's always best to get time to rest and to have something to eat. This I get from my wife, who is a doctor, and I am a doctor by marriage. So this is the advice that I have received through my marriage. So I now want to call upon Dr. Netumbo Nandi Ndaitwa, and the guest country speakers have 3 minutes each.
Thank you. To address disaster risk, the African continent has renewed commitment by adopting the Windhoek Declaration on advancing the program framework for disaster